to the Erotic Realm, where we explore the psychology of darker desires. I'm Em, and if you're new here, welcome. The Erotic Realm podcast has been growing rapidly, and I just want to take a moment to acknowledge all of you, especially those joining us from Substack. Whether you've been here with me from the beginning or just stepping into this world, I'm thrilled to have you here. This podcast is an extension of my work at Psychology of Desire, where I dive into the science and symbolism of the erotic mind. Here, we move beyond surface-level discussions of kink and sexuality. We explore the why behind our desires. Each episode, we step inside the erotic realm of someone who has ventured into these deeper, sometimes darker spaces. People who have found liberation, transformation, or even healing through their desires. By exploring the personal experiences of BDSM practitioners one by one, we break down the myth and dive into the reality of what it means to be a kinkster. So whether you're here out of curiosity, self-exploration, or a drive to understand the erotic mind on a deeper level, welcome. You're exactly where you need to be. Now, I've been mentioning on recent episodes that I had a project that I was about to launch, and I'm excited to announce not one, but two new projects with you today. The first project is the Erotic Realm Confessional. This is a live, on-location, mini version of this podcast. I dreamt up this idea and imagined taking the podcast to live kink events and interviewing kinksters while they are immersed in the kink world in a confessional style setup. I'm thrilled to announce that the Erotic Realm Confessional has been accepted to Oz Kink Fest in Melbourne this October, and I'll be setting up a private booth where kinksters can anonymously share insights into their erotic psychology. To make it happen, I'm raising funds for recording equipment, travel, and creating a beautiful, welcoming space. As a thank you for donating, your name will go on the confessional wall at the event, and you'll be personally thanked in a special episode recorded live from the festival. If this is a project that excites you and you'd love to be a part of it, you can find the donation link in the show notes. The second project I'm sharing with you today answers the question: have you ever wondered if you have similar erotic dreams to other people? Well, we're about to find out with the Deep Desire Project. The Deep Desire Project is a global research archive collecting erotic dreams and fantasies to map the inner terrain of desire across cultures and identities. I'm super excited about this as it brings together my background in sleep science with my love for erotic psychology. So in short, this project aims to be the largest archive of erotic dreams in the world. If you'd like to be part of it, go to psychologyofdesire.com or visit my Substack, Psychology of Desire. I've also left a link to the project in the show notes below. And lastly, before we dive into the episode, just a quick note that the erotic realm is growing rapidly right now. If you're a brand or business in the US that's aligned with kink, sex positivity, or erotic psychology, I'm currently seeking American sponsors for upcoming episodes. And now, let's jump into today's erotic realm. The following is a conversation with Hazel, a 25-year-old submissive masochist, rope switch, and erotic poet. In this episode, we explore how BDSM became a powerful path of healing, integration, and erotic truth. Hazel shares how rope play and masochism helped her transform chronic pain, reclaim pleasure, and embrace the darker layers of her desire. We talk about submission as strength, seduction as a spiritual practice, and how shadow work can unlock not only deeper intimacy, but self-acceptance. Hazel also reads one of her original pieces of erotic writing at the end of the episode, and it's unforgettable. Enjoy. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Erotic Realm podcast. Today, I'm thrilled to have with me Hazel. Welcome, Hazel.
Hi there. So happy to be here.
Happy to have you. So, at the request of the listeners of the Erotic Realm, I've recently added a new regular question to the beginning of the podcast. And my listeners would love to know more about you and your interests outside of kink, whether that be your general work area, if you're happy to share, or your hobbies, or both. What are you up to, Hazel, when you're not being a kinkster?
Oh, what a good question. So for my day job, I do a mix of research and birth work. So a lot of my focus is in perinatal mental health. So
Mm.
that keeps me very busy. And then hobbies, I do a lot of reading. I really like houseplants, and I'm working on growing things from seeds right now. So that's been taking up quite a bit of my time with trial and error. And I have two cats, so I spend a lot of my time hanging out with them and just like exploring my city. I moved here 5 years ago in the middle of the pandemic, so I feel like I haven't gotten to go out and experience it. So
Hmm.
I've been making that a priority lately.
Oh, thanks for sharing. Sounds very interesting. So now I'd love to dive into your sexuality. If you had to sum up your sexuality, how would you describe it?
Oh, one, yeah, I remember you had asked me one word, and I kind of went into a deep dive
Hmm.
on, if I had to like explain it to someone else. It's very fluid and it's very like kind of on the darker side. I've always been interested in like gothic themes, literature, dark romance, and I think that's definitely reflected in my sexuality.
So, what roles do you describe yourself as when it comes to your kinky sexuality in particular?
Yeah, so right now I'm in a full-time dynamic as a submissive. So within that role, I kind of fall under the degradee. It's like a very CNC based dynamic. So a lot of like the toy, doll, that kind of thing, very like property ownership based. And then outside of my dynamic, I identify as a rope switch. So I tend to be more toppy than dommy, and very playful when it comes to other parts of my kink life.
Hmm. And I've seen you describe yourself as a dark feminine submissive. Can you tell us a bit more about what that means for you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's super. A lot of people don't think that those two things go together.
Mm.
And I did not really think that they could until I met my current partner. And I tend to be kind of a tease, very seductive. I kind of like to provoke, not quite like a brat, but more to solicit that darker, more possessive side out of my partner. I play a lot with shadow themes and kind of walking the line of like, taboo and acceptable even within the kink space.
And is that a recent discovery for you, or is that something that you feel you've always been?
Oh, always.
Mm.
I remember I grew up with a very sex positive friend group, and we frequently shared like, the things we were into and the books that we were reading. And I always felt like I was the one who was like, oh, but like the vampires and the blood play and all of that stuff. And everyone was like, that's kind of weird. I struggled a lot to find a partner that matched that darker side. So I definitely repressed it for a while. So it's newly kind of out, new as in the past like 4 or 5 years, but it's definitely always been there.
Hmm. So, how did you start to bring that out? What was that process like for you? What was the pivotal point?
Oh, I guess I haven't really thought about that.
Mm. Did you go to a kink event, or did someone introduce you to the world of BDSM perhaps, or you read
Yeah,
about something?
so Yeah, so I got interested in BDSM through sneaking the 50 Shades of Grey book off of
Hmm.
my mom's bookshelf. And then when I was in college, I was introduced by one of my friends who would eventually become one of my metamors. And she took me to my first play party, showed me around, and I was just amazed at everything. But when I first entered the kink space, I was very shy. I'm not really an exhibitionist. I was not really wanting to explore the darker things yet. I was very scared.
Mm.
So I would say kind of like my intro to where my sexuality is now was after my move to Nashville through like definitely different literature, but also like being exposed to just like a deeper connection within kink.
Mhm.
My previous partners, I hadn't really emotionally attached to them in the way that kind of brings about the safety and trust to engage in that kind of play. So it took that and then some more discovery to get there.
Beautiful. So, one of the traditions on the podcast is exploring a quote's meaning with you. And today's quote is from Anais Nin, author of avant garde novels in the French surrealistic style and collections of erotica. And she's best known for her life and times in the Diary of Anais Nin. Now, she
Mhm.
wrote, eroticism is one of the basic means of self knowledge, as indispensable as poetry. And I was wondering, Hazel, does this resonate with you? As a writer, do you feel like there are commonalities between eroticism and poetry as a means for self knowledge? And if so, how?
Oh yes, I could go on about this.
Please.
I really, well, to me, eroticism is art, right?
Mm,
Every time you step into an interaction with another person or you kind of explore seduction and yourself, you are writing this kind of art piece that is going to live in your body and on your
mm,
skin for a while. And one of the things I found, like through discovering my own eroticism was that like lingering touch, those lingering feelings, and poetry elicits a lot of the same things from humans in general, from me. So I think it's really spot on.
hmm. And how has your erotic life or your kink journey taught you something about who you are that maybe nothing else could?
I think that kink gave me kind of a pass to explore the darker things, and with my philosophy behind like how I practice in psychology is just you don't really know yourself until you know the things that you don't like or that society doesn't like about you.
Mm,
And kink was definitely that for me. I am a highly sexual person. I am into things that a lot of people would deem wildly inappropriate, even within a kink space. So it taught me deep reflection about myself, and it taught me kind of to accept those darker parts and understand that, there was a name for these things. There was, people around me who knew how to do them and do them safely, and that there was a human that would love me through all of that and share those interests with me.
mm. Can you talk about some of these wild things that you mentioned?
Yeah, sure. So I read a book in 2020 during the pandemic. It's called Haunting Adeline, and it was kind of a stalker romance based around like, this girl, her grandmother had a stalker, and I'm not going to spoil it, but you find out more about that at the end of the book.
Mm,
But it is just this, obsessive, primal yearning love, obsession. I don't even know what to call it, but it is just like the most intense reverence that you've ever seen. But it's not gentle and it's not like kind. It's like a very, primal worship. And
mm,
um yeah, I think that would be kind of my biggest one of like we see obsession in a kink space as like very dangerous. But for me, that's one of the main things that I like to play with and kind of invoke those natural feelings out of my partner and allow them space to explore.
mm. So, is it fair to say that intensity and obsession are both a big part of your erotic realm?
Yes. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I would say so.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Now, you've spoken about these darker things and shadow work being central to your erotic psychology. How do you define shadow work within kink, and what has it revealed to you about the darker aspects of yourself?
I think shadow work in kink is something that doesn't always happen consciously. So when
Mm,
you're engaging in, sadism or masochism, like those are innately shadow traits, and those are things that are coming out through shadow work that you're doing, right? You're practicing and acknowledging those parts of you. And I think some of the reasons that people drop really hard is they don't realize that's what they're doing.
mm,
Um, so for me, shadow work has been, back to that like acknowledging of like myself, and I really like talking about it with other like kinksters that I meet, because I'm like, like you're loving on these really dark parts of yourself. And that's really, brave and amazing work. And a lot of people don't realize that that's what they're doing.
mm. Now, the shadow self includes all the darker, perhaps sometimes negative things that we may have repressed or unrecognized about ourselves. But of course, it
Mhm.
also includes the golden shadow, right? All of the
Yes.
positive aspects of ourselves that we also perhaps haven't recognized or integrated. Can you
Mhm.
share a moment where integrating a shadow part of yourself led to more erotic wholeness or freedom, or perhaps where it helped you own a positive aspect of your personality that you hadn't recognized before?
Yeah, I think my submission definitely would have been that
Mm-hmm.
of, I submit in a way that is, I want my partner to be able to use me to fulfill those, fantasies that they have, and, find those darker qualities about themselves. And I found that for me, it kind of creates a very large sense of empathy and
Mm,
understanding of like the human experience is not always sunshine and rainbows,
mm-hmm.
and being able to accept anyone where they're at and accept the darker parts of people. And I think it made me better at my job, quite frankly. I think it made me better at establishing community within a kink space. And I kind of just like being the one now that like people can talk to about really anything, because I've seen, my partner's darkest side and still loved them through that.
Mm. I'm so curious. Can you speak a bit more about how shadow works made you better at your job? Because a lot of people wouldn't think that that could happen, right?
Yeah,
Mm,
yeah. So, when you are birth, itself, birth and rebirth, as a parent, you make this transition between only being focused on yourself to now your entire existence is to keep this tiny thing alive.
mm,
And there are a lot of really big emotions that come out of that. And there's a lot of selfishness and ego and insecurity and self-doubt that comes out of that. And I've watched some of my clients go through, some of the darker emotions of, do I actually still want this child? And did I make the right decision? And can I do this? And I think by not being scared off from those really big feelings and those really dark feelings that can come about during the postpartum period, I've been able to support them through that.
mm. That's really beautiful. So it allows you to hold those darker aspects for your clients.
Yes, exactly. And also see them in like, that's okay. Like, that's
Mm,
not a weird feeling to have, and you're not a bad person because of that.
beautiful. So a tradition on the podcast is exploring a research article with you, the guest. And Hazel, I came across a study I knew that I had to bring into our conversation. It's titled Curative Kink: Survivors of Early Abuse Transform Trauma Through BDSM. So the researchers interviewed 20 people across 5 countries who had experienced early life trauma, and they found that for many, BDSM became a profoundly healing space. But what struck with me the most were the patterns that emerged. It wasn't about reenacting trauma for these people, it was about reclaiming selfhood. The participants described BDSM as a way to feel power again, to reframe pain, to rewire intimacy, and even rebuild their identity. And I feel it deeply echoed your own reflections on shadow integration and healing through kink that I've read on your profile. So I'd love to hear your take. So,
Yeah.
yeah, in your journey through kink and shadow work, has there been a moment where it felt like your erotic life was actively helping you rewrite the story of a past wound, for example?
For sure, for sure. I early in my kink life, I again because I do like to dabble in those darker elements. I walked a very thin line between, sadism that is consensually based and sadism that is not consensually based. And I think through kind of embodying those darker feminine aspects and the tease and being able to explore with my partner in a very safe environment, the darker aspects, I was kind of able to heal those things and also find parts of myself that I wanted to explore that I didn't necessarily feel safe to explore.
Mm.
Um, as far as early childhood goes, I mean, a lot of times people mistake the like daddy little girl dynamic to be, some sort of like stepdad kink or,
Mm-hmm.
a daddy issues thing. But for me, it was like safety to mess up and knowing that there was going to be someone who's going to hold me accountable for those things and witness my growth because
Mm.
I met my partner when I was 21. I mean, he's essentially watched me finish, growing up in a way. So I really sought out that dynamic as a way to kind of heal the lack of parenting I think I had, and to have someone witness me in my growth, in whatever way that showed up.
Mm. The article also talks about BDSM helping people reclaim a sense of agency and set boundaries in ways that felt empowering. Has learning to say yes or no in a scene spilled over into other areas of your life or relationships?
Oh, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
I would say when it comes to both my personal and professional life, I've gotten a lot of practice saying no in kink and also making compromise. So maybe I don't want to do this one thing, but I'm open to these five other things. And traditionally, it was difficult for me to compromise. And kink has kind of helped that and also helped me see other perspectives just through negotiating with other people and taking classes and just getting to see the different sides of how, everyone's masochism looks and everyone's sadism looks and everyone's rope kink looks. And I've just gotten a little bit more open.
Mm. And did you find it harder to say no before you were involved in the kink world? Has that changed as well?
I think I said no, but almost out of instinct. So everything anyone asked me was no first
Mm.
before it
Okay.
was yes.
Mm.
So kink has definitely taught me to stop and say, wait, I might want to do that thing or I might be into that thing.
Mm.
Then that has boiled over into stopping before I just say no out of, a way to maintain control or, not necessarily out of defiance, but as a way to stay in control in my personal
Mm.
life.
So the study also identified 6 themes, and these were cultural context, like using BDSM or therapy to reframe trauma, restructuring the self, so reclaiming parts of themselves that were harmed, liberation through relationship, like learning to feel valued in intimacy, reclaiming power, especially through setting boundaries, repurposing behavior, like using kink as a kind of exposure therapy, and redefining pain, transforming painful memories through masochism. When you hear those 6, is there one or two that speaks to your experience the most with the shadow work that you've done and why?
Yeah, it's interesting because I wouldn't think that this would be related, but the study has reminded me of it. I struggle with chronic pain in
Mm-hmm.
my, daily life. And, you know, it's something I've had to live with so often that I still experience pleasure through it. And for a while, my masochism felt very dangerous in that I was kind of pushing boundaries of my own pleasure, and I wasn't supposed to like this thing because I was constantly in pain. Um, but through kind of shadow work and definitely like transforming to feel valued in partnerships as another one of the themes. It kind of helped me see intimacy through that and share connection on difficult days.
So were you able to transmute the chronic pain into pleasure before BDSM, or did BDSM help you be able to do that?
No, definitely not beforehand.
Okay.
I would say like one of my first kinks that I explored was impact play because I was in pain all the time. So I was like, obviously,
Mm.
I'm going to be so good at this. And I found out that was not the case. And it actually created a panic response for me. And I had to kind of use it to process the fact that like, yes, I am in pain all the time. Yes, I still find pleasure through it. Therefore, I can find pleasure through this too.
Mm. So did you find pleasure because of the control aspect of it? You were controlling the pain?
Almost like someone else had control over it
Mm.
because I was not in control of it most of my life. I mean, most meds weren't working up until recently. One thing would hurt and then another thing would hurt. So having a partner who is able to control that was really helpful and really freeing for me to be able to sit and experience it knowing someone had it under control.
Well, I'm so glad you found BDSM and a partner that could help you with that. That's really amazing.
Mhm.
Mm. Now, for some people in the study, kink wasn't just healing, it was transcendent. Have you ever experienced what you describe as a spiritual moment in BDSM, where the line between pain, pleasure, and release might have felt almost mystical? And if so, can you tell us about it?
I don't think so yet,
Mm-hmm.
but it's something that I am working towards. I think kink for me has been so like emotionally loaded because of past relationships and like getting into it very, very young.
Mm.
So I'm working on getting to that point where where it, I can kind of let go a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. So you mentioned that you once tried to blame trauma for your darker desires. I'm so curious about this. How did that narrative shift and what did that change open up for you?
Yeah, so I previously, because my trauma had happened when I was younger, while I was kind of getting into formal kink, I liked to, blame it and say that, oh, I was, into impact play because I'd been in an abusive relationship, and I was, into DS because I had had, possessive and controlling partners. But that really wasn't the case.
Mm.
As I had said earlier, I got into like reading about these different themes very young. I don't know if anybody remembers the Wattpad era of reading, but it was a platform where people wrote little short stories, and there weren't really a lot of rules around what you were allowed to write. And it's something I found, early in high school, and I think that's where a lot of my, what I say, founding kinks were found, and that was before the trauma. So,
Mm-hmm.
as much as I would like to say, oh, it's the daddy issues and the previous poor relationships, it definitely was not.
So, was that process more about reflecting on your childhood and just understanding that those things were occurring before the trauma, or did you go through therapy? What was that process like of disentangling that?
I think it was a little bit of therapy
Mm.
that helped in more of the self-acceptance part of it.
Mm.
Because again, like all of my friends were talking about the things that they were into, and none of them were aligning with me
Yeah.
and what I, was reading about and desiring. So it took a lot of me being able to own what I liked and not looking for an excuse to
Mm-hmm.
not, accept that part of myself. And I think it also took getting into the kink community. So a lot of the understanding of who I was, where my eroticism was, and the things I was desiring came from seeing other people feeling shame about their kinks and their experiences, but overcoming that. And I was like, oh, they're stressed about that thing that they like. And I think that's, totally fine. I bet there's someone out there who's going to look at me, with the things I'm into and be like, okay, that's it. Like, that's not that, that's
Mm-hmm.
not that crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I'm all about owning your darker desires. So I'm glad that you've been able to get to that point. And yeah, thank goodness for the kink community, right?
Yeah, no, it's been so helpful.
Mm-hmm. I'd love to chat about your DS dynamic. So, what does being a collared submissive mean to you in practical and emotional terms?
Yeah, so for me, it is about just a very deep and raw devotion. I've never been super obedient. I've never really been one that doesn't challenge my dominant, but it comes from a place of very deep devotion and wanting him to be happy at all costs. And I kind of do follow those obsessive themes in a way that I consider him in everything that I do. So from an emotional standpoint, it is constantly like, would he be proud of this thing that I'm doing? And, um, just working to kind of consider him in all things. And with the age gap that we have, the devotion has come with, an understanding of like, we will go through different life things at different times and being ready and willing to see him through all of that and be unwavering by his side.
Lovely. So, a lot of people, when they hear about being submissive, they might just think that being submissive is giving up control. What would you say to those people, and how does service, devotion, and surrender feel different from simply giving up control?
Yeah, it's such an interesting understanding that society has kind of decided about submissives that you're just kind of very meek and you don't have any power. And I derive a lot of my power from knowing that I can care for another human through service. I anticipate his needs very well. I understand how to keep our home running. I understand how to keep him running. And that deep devotion creates such a level of trust and intimacy that I don't really think can be understood unless you're in it. And
Mm.
so I don't fault people for thinking that, oh, like you're just giving up control. Like you just, do whatever he says. It's like, no, like we have sat and we have built this dynamic, brick by brick, and we have developed this very deep understanding of each other because, in my opinion, the dominant serves just as much as the submissive does. I mean, they serve
Mm.
in ways that might not look like service to, the general public, but sometimes, that impact scene is not for the dominant or for the sadist. It is for the submissive to have, that emotional release or that cathartic moment. And it's a lot of kind of mix of power and mix of like understanding of each other.
Hmm. Yeah, I think you've summed it up so well. Submission, it's not about giving up control. It's an active, not a passive process, right? It's very active.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah, it would be so boring if it was passive. Like, I
Hmm.
can't imagine if I just said, okay, like,
Yep.
everything he said and just did it, quietly or waited for him to give me a list of rules to, follow. We didn't really do the contract thing. We kind of just, I mean, we've built our dynamic arguably over 4 years, but formally over the past two. And we've just kind of seen where we fit into each other's lives and where our dynamic fits in there. And I think it would be boring if it was a passive only, started by the dominant process.
Hmm. So, Hazel, what qualities in your dominant allow you to deepen into your submission the most?
Hmm. That's interesting. I would say his openness. I think that when it has especially come to me, he has been very open and understanding of all parts of me, and very accepting. He has very high empathy, which is always interesting to see in a sadist for sure. I think
Hmm.
a lot of times when people think of like, S&M based DS dynamics, like, well, they can't possibly, have high empathy, but it's really been really nice experiencing that from him. And we like to joke that we're both very irreverent. We don't really um, hold many things sacred. And he's been one of the only people that I have been able to just, you know, not take everything so seriously, especially when it comes to kink, and
Mm.
have a lot of fun and lightheartedness about the world and, our dynamic.
Yeah, I think it's important to highlight that Kinksters do have a lot of empathy and a lot of fun. It's not always serious or about inflicting as much pain as you possibly can.
Hmm.
So,
And
how
even
did
when it comes to control too, just like, having a high level of empathy, even though like you have basically like consensual possession over another person.
mm, hmm how did you meet your dom, and what advice would you give to a submissive that is seeking a dominant?
Meet them in places where you already find yourself. So I did not go looking for my dominant. He fell into my lap.
Okay.
I made a post in our local Discord channel about kind of like a branch of philosophy that I'm really interested in, and he responded. And so I DM'd him. I think I DM'd him first.
Hmm.
Yes, I think so. And we just started talking, and things naturally escalated from there. So I find that I find exactly what I'm looking for when I stop looking for it. And that is how I found him. And that's the advice I would give any submissive, even like when they say, go to your local club and you'll find them. Like you might not. Look
Hmm.
where your hobbies are, look where your community is, and that's where you're going to find them.
Great advice. And it's so true. It happened to me as well. Exactly what you're saying. Hmm. So let's chat about rope. It's my understanding it's one of your favorite kinks to explore. What is
Yes.
it about rope that speaks so deeply to your erotic realm? Is it containment, release, ritual, something else entirely?
It is, it goes back to that kind of predatory seduction that I really value in a partner of like this idea that they have captured you and you are kind of just at their disposal, but in a way that's not like leather and chains. It just feels so natural,
Hmm.
almost like ethereal of like so light and so human, but also like very dark and very sinister. I think a lot of people look at rope and they're like, oh, it's so pretty and you're tied up, but it is, what we do now is transformed from torture. And I think a lot of people who still do rope carry that sentiment with them. And those are the kinds of scenes that I enjoy the most of just kind of feeling at the mercy of the predator that has you.
There is a predatory aspect to it. Have you ever watched a spider catch its prey and tie it up in its web? It always,
Exactly.
yeah, it always reminds me of rope and kink. And sometimes they wrap the thing that they've caught up for a long time. I watched one for about 40 minutes once. It was amazing.
Yes, I
Mhm.
actually, my theme song is Lola Montez by Volbeat because very much when I'm topping rope, that's how it feels. Very like, I have caught this cute little thing and I'm going to tie it into this package to devour it later. And I enjoy when that is, put back on me as well.
Love it. Now, you describe yourself as a rope switch, but you're also a self suspender.
Mhm.
What do you discover about yourself when you suspend your own body in rope?
I'm very out of shape. It's usually what I discover. Self-suspension for me has not been as kinky as I think I would have liked. It has become far more of a sport than partnered rope has been previously, and more of like an art form, but less in the erotic sense and more of kind of the empowerment over my body.
Hmm. So, you've done a lot of work on rope accessibility, I noticed. How do
Mhm.
you think chronic illness, neurodivergence, and physical limitation can actually deepen one's kink practice?
I think it requires you and it requires your partner, if you're practicing partnered kink, to
Mm,
have a deeper understanding of you as a person and of your body. Because just because you have chronic pain and chronic illness does not mean your symptoms are going to look the same every day. And it doesn't mean that your response to different elements of a scene are going to be the same every time. And I think we put a lot of emphasis on communication, but also when it comes to chronic illness, like the nonverbal communication of, when I have like a spot on my back that where if it's hit, it triggers my sciatica down my legs.
mm,
So my partner being able to see that when we're in a CNC based scene so that I don't necessarily have to communicate that to him. He is aware and he can either choose to keep hitting it or to relieve me of that pain. And if he did not know those things about me, I would not be able to give up control nearly as much as I can with him. So I think it requires a deeper understanding and it requires more conversation, I think, than, able-bodied people have in their regular sex life and their kink life. There's more we have to consider.
Hmm. Now, as part of our conversation today, I asked you to bring along something to share, such as a quote, book, or movie that's influenced your sexuality. You've mentioned a few things already, but do you have something else that you'd like to share that's had an impact on your erotic realm?
Yes, actually,
Hmm.
it's a
Cool.
little odd, but the story
Perfect.
of Hades and Persephone.
Mm.
I feel like it has been, the smut has taken the story 100 different ways and it has a million different interpretations, but it's this idea of like this possessive, consuming, haunting, obsession that Hades has over Persephone to the point where he drags her down to the underworld. And
Hmm.
then, the compromise of I will be here, 6 months out of the year, and then 6 months I return and I am the queen of spring and I bring the harvest and I bring the joy that the sun is back. And the idea that this traditionally painted submissive person can be both queen of hell and queen of spring
Mm.
really kind of shaped my eroticism in that you could have this loving, obsessive, dark, deep dynamic and still return to the natural world and bring life and joy.
I love that. That's so beautiful and so well said. And I can see from what you've told us how that would resonate with you so strongly. Perfect.
Mhm.
Now, you've mentioned seduction a few times in our conversation and how seduction is a key part of your erotic identity. I'm curious to hear from you. What is seduction?
For me, it's very like oral based, meaning like speech, voice,
Mm.
things that are said, things that are not said, but said, with body language. I don't tend to get excited until things start being communicated to me in one way or another. So I'm not someone who's like oh, bend over the bench and let me hit you kind of scene person. Seduction for me starts days before, and it's very involved, and it speaks into that, obsessive nature of like, I have been thinking of doing this thing to you for days, and I can tell you the different facets of why I want to do it and how I want to do it. And it might do it that way, or I might get into the moment and decide, this is the feeling that I have, and I'm telling you how it's changed and how it's evolved. So for me, seduction isn't necessarily just like complimentary. I think a lot of
Mm.
people kind of see it that way of like, oh, you're so beautiful, you're so this. It's like, no, I want to know the deep carnal things that you want to do to me. And that itself is seduction. To just that open, raw honesty about what you're feeling in the moment.
Mm. It sounds like it's very mental for you as well.
I would say eroticism, kink, and sex are 99.9% mental for
Hmm.
me. I don't really struggle with the physical aspects of things. I haven't really run into challenges with like orgasm or, being ready for, really anything. So I've really gotten to dive into the mental aspect and play more there.
Hmm. Now, seduction is something that a lot of people struggle with. Did it always come naturally to you, or is it a skill that you had to learn?
Depends if I'm having an anxious day or not.
Hmm.
I think for me, seduction and understanding what I want has always come very easy because it's something I have always sought out. I really value having a deep understanding of myself, both, the good traits, the negative traits, as society would deem them. So really, the ease of seduction comes with, do I feel comfortable sharing this with this person in that moment?
Hmm.
Because for me, if I have a fleeting thought, I'm not going to share it the next day, right? I either want to communicate that to that person now and see their reaction and feel their reaction, or just let it go and have it be a moment that I'm having with myself. So it's been easy. It's something that's come very naturally to me, but it's also something that wavers based on where I'm at with myself.
Hmm. Now, we have another tradition on the podcast where I ask you a question sourced from our listeners. And today's question is a great one for a switch. So, did you identify as a Dom or a sub first, or did you know from the start that you were a switch?
What a good question.
Mm.
I think being a switch is so complicated in the kink world.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that a lot of people didn't believe switches existed. You were just like a bad sub if you were a switch
Mm-hmm.
until someone communicated that to me. And I was like, oh, what a weird way to think about that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I have always been submissive. I have always enjoyed being dominated in an erotic sense. I think my switchiness comes out more in that like dark feminine aspect of, the femme fatale, the devouring, the obsession, the, you know, seduction to the point where that person loses control or, is within control, but kind of feels like they're losing control, feels naturally dominant to me. And I have kind of figured out a way to do it submissively, but the switch identity comes from that aspect of more of just the like dark, haunting feminine that traditionally society would see as embodying masculine and dominant traits. But for me,
Mm-hmm.
still feels very submissive. So I don't know if the switch identity still stands outside of rope.
Mm-hmm.
But I would think society would classify me as a switch.
Mm-hmm. So, you also mentioned about your witchiness. I wanted
Yes.
to chat about that. You say that you're a green witch studying plant medicine. Can you share with us a bit about what that means for you and if that influences your kink life at all?
Yes, I wouldn't, well, I think I would say it influences my ability to be present in my kink life. I've learned a lot of lessons from plants as I've matured as an adult. And plant medicine is more having to do with, well, actually, so I started getting into the herbalism side of things with work. It's pretty common for doulas and midwives to work with plant medicine outside of like, um, modern medicine. I hate calling it that, but we try to find, lesser disruptive ways to assist in labor than, throwing someone on Pitocin or other interventions. And a lot of that has related to me then looking into more of like women's health and cycle health and, the causes of different things that we have found are related to birth control. So for the past year, I have kind of used plant medicine through one of my other partners who is an herbalist themselves, to kind of find my femininity again. I felt very disconnected from myself when I started on birth control. My
Mm-hmm.
hormones were all over the place, and I just wanted to reconnect and also see if it would stabilize some of like my chronic illness things to work with different plants versus working with modern medicine. And I think that's just made me a better kinkster. I think it's made me a better submissive to be more in touch with myself. And it's definitely helped with the chronic pain situation. So I think it's made me a better rope artist as well.
Mm. I'm curious to hear from you now about a peak erotic experience of yours. Is there something that when you think about it, it really speaks to your erotic realm and has stayed in your mind since it happened?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I would say like the first probably year with my current dominant, but I would say probably our first or second date that we had. We talked for a while before we eventually went out, but we had that kind of instant primal connection that I just had not experienced with anyone else. And I found this word when I was doing research for the podcast. They call it predatory reverence. I don't
Hmm.
know if that's something you're familiar
No,
with,
I'm not. Tell us.
but it's basically worship that is just very possessive and but unwavering in reverence for like the body. So it is not violent, but it's meticulous and ritualistic. It's by no means gentle, but it's not cruel either. It's more just like overpowering hunger in a predatory sense to explore that person and that person's body. And I found it was present in a lot of the smut that I read and a lot of the stories that I was drawn to. And then that was, I guess that would be that initial feeling from that date of just feeling the energy off of him of possession and just raw, uninhibited desire, but in such a way that cared for my body and respected me as a person while walking that very thin line.
Sounds really fun.
It was great.
Yeah. So what are you excited about exploring next, Hazel? What are you looking forward to exploring with your dom or other people in the kink community?
Oh, you know, I'm starting to feel like I'm running out of things to explore. I am
Oh.
very much a experimentalist, and I've kind of hit one of those kink plateaus where I'm like, where do I go from here?
Mm-hmm.
My rope journey is pretty flowing as like on the artist side. And my dominant and I have hit a really good rhythm with our dynamic. Um, and I started reading, I'd taken a break from reading like erotic literature for work and for school to be able to focus more of my energy. But I've started getting back into erotica and smut to find kind of that thing that's going to I don't know, I guess inspire me
Mm-hmm.
to try something new.
Yep.
I'm definitely playing with pain a little bit more now that my chronic pain itself has come down a little bit. And definitely figuring out like kind of the more domestic sides of being a submissive and living with my partner half the time. Um, so I'm in a waiting period. I'm kind of liking it. It's allowing me some time to explore, but also to really figure out where I want to go next.
Mm-hmm. Now, you've mentioned that you love smut and you're also a writer of poetry and kink. How does
Yes.
writing help you understand your erotic self?
Oh, I think it's entirely responsible for it.
Mm.
As I was telling you before we started the podcast, I tend to feel like I can't necessarily articulate what I want in the moment
Mm.
if I haven't explored it by myself first. So, a lot of times before I bring an idea to my dominant, I have spent hours writing about it somewhere, anywhere. I've written poetry about it, I've written my own erotica about it. I've tried to figure out how I feel about it so that I can better articulate that and get, a very clear idea of what I'm trying to explore. And I think also through getting feedback on writing has helped a lot with the shame aspect of, seeing a comment of someone who's like, oh, that's really hot. I'm into that too. It's like, oh, wow, my processing of something I wanted to explore through writing inspired someone else to explore that thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I attributed a lot to building my confidence in the kink space and in asking for what I want by having a safe space to explore it by myself first before I bring it to someone else.
Speaking of your writing, I wanted to do something a bit different today. I've had a good look at your profile and read some of your erotica, and I
Oh,
wanted to
goodness.
ask, yeah, I wanted to ask if you would indulge us and read us one of your writings before we go. I have a link here to a writing piece that I particularly loved. Can I send it through to you and
Oh,
see if
my
you're comfortable
goodness.
reading it?
Yeah, of course. I'm so interested to see which one you picked.
Let me see. I've just sent it through. Hopefully it's come through okay.
Oh,
Would you be
yeah.
comfortable reading that?
I think so. Yeah, it might take me a few times to get the. Oh, yeah, I remember this one. Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, yeah, sure. Uh,
Awesome.
So the rating that she sent me is called Well Trained. So just to give a little bit of background on kind of why I wrote this, I it was at a point in time last year when I was kind of struggling with my like myself as a submissive, and I just kind of felt like I was messing up all the time, and I needed to remind myself of where we came from. So I wrote this poem and then I posted it, and it got a lot of really good feedback. And I didn't really think anyone was going to identify with this because it was so personal. But a lot of people said that they found some similarities in the themes. So I can read it for whenever you're ready.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. So the title is Well Trained, and it says, sometimes I forget that in the midst of it all, I am well trained. The hours he has poured into me, the hours that got us here, the burnt meals followed by the last minute takeout orders, corrections to speech, gentle lifts of my chin, the slow descent into the floor, my place at his feet becoming my favorite, learning what was earned and what was promised, the you can take it, the allowances to hide on evenings I needed to, even though we were there to put on a show, knowing the only thing that mattered was us. The subtle what ifs that turned into our favorite evenings, and the trials that taught us about evenings we never wanted to repeat. The late night driving home in the rain with only each other's voices to keep us company, that turned into reminders of our commitment whenever it pours. The call of my name when he knew I needed it, and learning to call his when we both did. That he is my friend first, my partner second, my daddy third, my owner last, but I am his always.
Hmm. Beautifully written. Thanks for sharing and reading that
Thank
for us
you.
today. How do you feel after reading it?
Happy. It reminds me so much of just where we started and how we got here. And it's been the most beautiful story I've ever gotten to experience. So it always makes me feel good.
Amazing. Is there anything else you'd like to share with us, Hazel? Perhaps something you feel we've missed that you'd like to speak about, or something in general you'd like to share with your fellow Kingsters?
Oh, I don't know. Just love yourself, I guess. I come from a really big community here in Nashville, and one of the things I have learned from the people around me is the only way to really have a fulfilling kink life is to unapologetically love who you are and
Mm.
how your kinks show up, and kind of the things you want to explore safely, obviously. And it's been really awesome preparing for this podcast, also, learning a little bit more about myself and getting to talk through some things that I hope others will resonate with.
I'm sure they will. So, lastly, if I was to ask you to sum up your sexuality in just one word, what would that word be for today?
Oh, I wrote down a few,
Hmm.
but I think chthonic, which I had defined as primal and ancient, deep and unknowable.
Mm.
So this idea that my eroticism is very old. It's based in themes that have been around in like human archetypes for a really long time.
Hmm.
And it's also something that is kind of unknowable because it's so different between everyone, how that urge and that drive and obsession, when you find that person that brings it out in you, will show up. So that's how I would describe it. And I'm sure my Cthulhu lovers out there will appreciate it. It's by far been my best smut. My favorite smut theme has been like Cthulhu smut that's been written.
So did you say the word was chthonic?
Yep. Chthonic, chthonic.
Okay, cool. I'll write it down so people can look it up as well.
Perfect.
So if people want to connect with you, Hazel, where can they find you?
You can find me on FetLife and Instagram at Batgirl Bruja, as in like Batgirl, the superhero, and Bruja is the Spanish word for witch. And it's one big word.
Wonderful. I'd like to thank you for being so open and sharing yourself with me and our listeners today, Hazel.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been so fun, and I can't wait to listen to more podcasts that you record.
Thank you again. I'm Em, and this has been the Erotic Realm podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, I'd love it if you could follow the podcast and leave a rating or review. Your support means the world to me, and it helps the Erotic Realm grow and reach more people who may benefit from hearing the inner world of fellow Kinksters. I'd also love to hear from you, my listeners, if you have questions you'd like me to ask on the podcast, want to be a guest and share your story, or if you're ready to explore your erotic realm one-on-one with a coaching package, head over to theeroticrealm.com. Thank you so much for listening, and as always, stay perverted.